Today, a high school teacher shares a great malicious compliance story with an angry mom. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, dump that beer. Okay. Reading another post reminded me of this encounter a long time ago when I was 19 or 20. A little backstory, at the time, my driver's license was altered to make me 21. But if you looked close, you could tell. However, the 7-Eleven near my house had previously carded me, so they never carded me again. Also, in San Diego, there was a huge annual fireworks show that would be set to fire from the stadium in Mission Valley. Those that lived in the area knew there were places on top of the hills overlooking the valley that had an excellent viewpoint of the show, and we would just sit on the grass and watch it for free. During these events, about 5 streets all closest to this overlook area were blocked off for a block party. The police manned the barricades. To drive in, you had to show ID to prove you lived in the blocked off section, but anyone can walk or bike in. Now, on this evening, I bought 2 beers for the show with cash. I was on my bike and left my wallet at home. I had about 2/3 of one beer already drank when I'm getting close to the barricade. I was thinking the bike is still considered a vehicle and having an open container might be illegal, so instead of just biking through, which I could have done easily, I stopped to ask the cop about the open container thing, and instead of answering, she got very confrontational. Also, I later heard that cops assigned to these barricades are the rookies. Here's the dialogue. The rookie, first thing she says is, "How old are you?" I reply, 21. The rookie says, "Let me see some ID." I tell her, "I didn't bring it. I live just 3 blocks from here." The rookie responds, "I need to see ID now." I tell her I don't have it, and she responds, "You're going to have to dispose of that beer." I said, "What? Look, I came up to you to prevent trouble." She reiterates, "You need to dispose of that beer now." I respond, "Okay," and I chugged the last of that beer. She says, "No, not that way." I respond, "Oh," and gave her my best dumb teenager look. The rookie, she's mad now, says, "What's in the bag?" Me, knowing that I couldn't pull that same trick twice, said, "A Pepsi." She says, "Let me see." I ask her, "Do you have a warrant?" I didn't know crap about laws except for what I saw on TV. She says, "Open the bag." I say, "Only if you have a warrant." She responds, "If you don't let me see, I'm going to call for backup." I tell her, "Then call your backup." She says, "Wait right here," and I say, "Okay." So about 5 minutes later, a patrol car with 2 male cops pull up off the edge of the barricade and wave me over. One of them talks to me and says, "How old are you?" I tell him 21. He says, "Go ahead and get out of here." I walked back over to where I parked my bike, gave the rookie a smile, and rode away. I think the rookie was about to have a stroke. This was the big bust of her career, getting away. I'm just laughing on the inside knowing I just got away with crap. I mean, I don't fault OP for doing what they did here because it's kind of the same thing as like TSA saying, "Look, you gotta dispose of your Dr. Pepper. You can drink it right here if you want, but it just can't cross this point." Maybe OP's family took a lot of vacations. Maybe they've got a lot of experience. Certainly seemed like a pro putting that beer back. King Weenus commented, "We had a similar experience way up north in Saskatchewan, Canada. It was May, long weekend, and that means you're not allowed to have open liquor in provincial parks no matter how old you are due to some shenanigans a couple years back. Anyway, we had a buddy with a 66 ounce of vodka and the police caught him outside his tent and said, "You've got to dump it." And he said there's no way. Mind you, it wasn't open, it was only exposed and still factory sealed. They insisted they were going to confiscate it, and he said, "Nope, you gotta dump it, because rumor has it the cops around here will confiscate your liquor and then it would just end up at their Christmas party." So the cops finally relented and said, "Okay, you can dump it," and he just starts downing the hatch. That's 66 ounces going down, and the cops wrestled him to the ground and hauled him off to the drunk tank for the night. Not all heroes wear capes. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is, enjoy your mail, jerk. I worked for a large life insurance company, talking to customers on the phone. I got a call from a foul-mouthed, sharp-talking, abusive caller. I could see through the phone the jerk in a suit behind his desk caller in my mind. He spoke beyond sharp. He was loud, forceful, and peppered his speech with the worst profanity. He demanded to know if he could split his life insurance benefit between 2 people and if they had to be family. I told him he could, and they didn't. He then demanded to get the change of benefits form sent to his office. I told him I could do this. He made me repeat back to him what we spoke about and that I promised to send the change of benefits form to his office, not his home. He said his wife was busy and didn't need to be bothered with mental business. He actually said, "Repeat after me, I will so-and-so," and he made me do this twice. By the time he was done, I was practically in tears. I was shaking. I kind of had an idea of why he wanted the form sent to his office, not his home. Anyone else guess? Well, I sent the change of benefits form to his office as requested. I did not, however, mention the automatic "I can't do anything about it" confirmation of beneficiary change letter that would be sent to his home address, listing the amounts and names of the beneficiaries. I went back in weeks later and found the change made as requested and changed back to wife only again. First of all, I'll admit I wish OP wrote beneficiary instead of BENE every time they meant change of beneficiary form. I said benefits because I assumed that's what it meant. I guess, I don't know, it's just too hard to type out beneficiary 3 times. Regardless, it's pretty obvious in most situations where somebody's like, "Can you send that to the office? Please make sure none of that gets sent to my home." There's almost always just one outcome happening there, right? Like Tasty Adhesiveness 66 commented, "Guess who got caught cheating?" Our next story is, need the section van cleaned? No problem. I've been a long-time lurker in the sub, and I've been debating for a while on whether or not to post this. I think enough time passed that there should be no issues with it, but I will still refrain from talking about time frames, people, and things like that. Sorry in advance if the writing isn't too great. This is actually my first story post I've ever done. Background: I was deployed overseas for a year in a hot, dry country in the Middle East. This was a routine deployment with people generally saying that the worst part of the experience would be boredom and having nothing to do. That's how it was supposed to be for my section, but I would soon find out that things wouldn't work out that way. If you're not familiar with how the structure is laid out, my platoon is part of a section, which is part of a company, which is part of a division. We had an OIC, officer in command, who was assigned to be in charge of our section. One thing to know about the guy is he had a record of being an overachiever, and not in the best ways. OIC would pitch ideas about doing exercises and operations specifically because he wanted to have bullet points on his evaluation report at the end of the year. This led us to be constantly doing redundant stuff. But it's the military, so that kind of stuff is expected. The issue with OIC being so gung-ho about getting his bullet points is that he would take everything to the extreme, and he genuinely did not know anything about how our equipment worked or what our jobs were. As an example of how frustrating this can be, he told us we needed to accomplish Task A, and we have 2 weeks to do it. We told him, "Sir, in order to do Task A, we need at least 4 weeks with our current manpower and workload to accomplish that." OIC would blow us off and tell us that we need to find a way to do it in 2 weeks because he said so. Keep in mind, this man has no idea what it is we do and is blowing off all of the input that we're giving him. In the end, we did manage to accomplish Task A by pulling 24-hour rotations around the clock with an 18-hour workday for 3 weeks straight. Keep in mind that this is just a bullet point for this man. There's no mission here, there's no lives on the line. This guy just wanted to pad his own resume. When we told him that we physically could not meet the 2-week deadline for Task A, he dressed us down and chewed us out saying, "We were dragging butt and this is absolutely unacceptable." It was like this non-stop for the first 6 months of my deployment. We would be outside all day setting up our work site, accomplish whatever redundant task OIC would be making us do. We would tear down the work site, and then we would move the work site to the next spot and set up there. It was a constant cycle of build up, tear down, move equipment, repeat. All while OIC would tell us how we're lazy and never did anything because we would go over whatever timeline he came up with. The worst part of all of this is when it started getting into the hot season, it would be 120 to 130 degrees, and we would be in a non-air conditioned Humvee in full Kevlar kit, moving equipment and pounding grounding stakes into the rock ground all day, every day. There were multiple people, including me, who had heat-related injuries from this experience. All of this is happening while our OIC is chewing us out non-stop from his air-conditioned office. The van. All of this was pretty crappy, but not unheard of when it comes to the military experience. However, this is where it starts to get juicy. One day, there was a new task given to our section. This task was sent down by OIC himself. The task was, clean our section-assigned van. We all need to do our part. As you read earlier in this post, we as a section had to use oven-hot Humvees for all of the tasks we were given for the months leading up to the incident. Everyone in the section had the exact same reaction to this task. We've had a van this entire time? Come to find out, OIC didn't want to walk the half mile to Chow every day, so he secretly commandeered our section van with crisp cold AC so he wouldn't get sweaty in the desert heat on his way to the DFAC dining facility. As you can guess, people were irate over this news. We've been having people drop from heat exhaustion, and this guy had been using a van meant to be shared as a section as his own personal vehicle. The only reason it came to light is because someone much higher ranked than himself needed to use the van to get to the airport. So, OIC wanted us plebeians to clean out the van that he kept to himself and made messy on his own, because obviously, we all need to do our part. Cue malicious compliance. I had a sergeant in charge of me at the time, who I'll call Sergeant Ziz. He was a bodybuilder and an amazing sergeant. When he found out about the news, he called a huddle for the platoon. He knew exactly how we all felt about the situation and made a few things clear. As the order needs to make its way down the chain of command, it needs to go through him to get to us. Sergeant Ziz made it clear that he felt the situation was unethical and he refused to give us the order to clean the van. He said, "I will not be sending my troops to do a task that was given to us from an ivory tower. Instead, he and one other sergeant will be doing the task themselves." Sergeant Ziz and the other sergeant took the van to the PX on base. He then loaded up on Q-tips, trash bags, and cleaning product. He then went back to the bay and grabbed his very loud JBL speaker. Sergeant Ziz then parked the van at the entrance of the division command tent. This man blasted the Army recruitment song at full volume while he and the other sergeant cleaned the van out with Q-tips. There were many upper cadre who stopped by either on their way out or into the command tent, wondering what the commotion was about. Sergeant Ziz was more than happy to explain the situation. OIC told us he wanted us to clean his van because everyone needs to do their part. No one told him to stop, and after 4 hours of the Army soundtrack, the van was pristine. He turned it back in, and we assumed that was the end of it all. It was a little funny, and we all felt a massive morale boost after being punted into a corner this entire deployment. Aftermath, what ended up happening shocked a lot of us. The division OIC, our OIC's boss, heard about some contention around an incident with a van outside the division command tent. Apparently, some of the high brass here thought it was rude and annoying to the people coming and going. There were also complaints that, during this time, Sergeant Ziz was wanted for his expertise in our field of work, but he wasn't available to help because he was cleaning the van. This caused him to want to look into what caused the entire debacle. The DOIC, Division Officer in Command, held a town hall meeting. A town hall meeting is held by the section first sergeant where anybody can bring up any issues or concerns they have without fear of repercussions. Normally, this type of event is more administrative than anything else. You guys are good? No, first sergeant, there's mold in our barracks and no hot water. Little things like that are normally what's talked about, and it generally takes about an hour to sort through it all and finish the meeting. This town hall meeting, however, took 5 hours. The first sergeant was shocked at the revelations that came out of it. We talked about how we haven't had a real day off since we've had boots on the ground, how OIC hasn't been at site once this entire deployment, how we're being reprimanded for timelines that aren't possible, etc. And of course, we talked about the van. After the 5-hour-long town hall meeting, the first sergeant was visibly enraged. He was very upset with how our OIC was handling things, and even more upset that this was happening under his nose this entire time, and he wasn't aware of any of it. He took everything he heard and brought it up to the DOIC, and we were told that there would be action taken on our behalf to fix this. Fast forward 1 week, and we've not heard a peep from OIC. This would continue for the rest of deployment. OIC didn't give us a single task, job, or detail for the next 4 months. It was fair to assume he got quite the chewing out, and the only reason he kept his position was due to there being no one to take his place. Every time we would see him, he looked like a sad puppy, and you could tell this deployment was not going the greatest anymore. Normally, the tail end of deployment is one of the busiest times for my section. We have a ton of equipment that needs to be packed, organized, and inventoried. It's a pretty big workload, but after the amount of work we had to do for the first 6 months, those final months felt like a holiday. The timing for the relaxed workload came just in time for Space Marine 2 to come out. Those last 4 months were amazing. Well, first of all, I appreciate OP and the service they've done. But secondly, I guess you could say at least one thing: they conditioned OP and all of the fellow people working in their division to be really good at the routine stuff. I mean, what they had to do and what they experienced sucked, and I'm glad that it got so much easier for OP on the tail end. But almost in a way, it was like OP and the rest of the guys there were being exercised with weighted vests on or something. And then when it finally got back to normalcy, it was kind of like a breeze. Well, maybe without any actual breeze going by. Rotten Rot 69 commented, "Reminds me of when I was in the chair force. We had a 90s Dodge panel van with vinyl seats and rubber mats. I cleaned it all out and armor-alled everything. My NC OIC cursed me every time he slid in and out of that thing." Our next story is Cutting Nose Off to Spite Lungs. Back at the start of this century, I was working at a place that was run by a company we'll anonymize by calling Crapita. They only let smokers go for breaks. I kid you not. Feels alien these days that an employer could do that. I got annoyed by this, so I took up smoking. Got my morning and afternoon breaks. Worst malicious compliance ever. I've been smoking on and off ever since, mostly off. I'm quitting again today, which brought it to mind. Of course, with 25 plus years hindsight, I could have just bought a packet of cigarettes and not smoked them, just used them as an excuse. But I wasn't that smart in my late teens or early 20s. Hopefully this time quitting works. Still, there's a certain amount of satisfaction in beating the system at the time. I know it's crazy, but OP is not the first person that I've heard say, "I've taken up smoking to literally get breaks at work." Even recent stories in like the past few years, people have shared how they work at places where only smokers get more breaks than the average person. I could be wrong, but I feel like it kind of persists in a system where people high up still smoke. If the higher-ups want to take more frequent breaks to get their nicotine fix, then likely they're going to hold on to or just allow more people to do the same too. Happy Mr. Rogers commented, "Start of the century? Bruh, you can't just open with that. I feel old enough as it is." Buddy Matt replied, "I swear my hip broke just reading it." Our next story is, Kohl's wouldn't price match Black Friday, so I followed their policy very carefully. This happened over Black Friday. Back in October, I bought a vacuum from Kohl's online for in-store pickup. It normally sold for around $330, but I paid $250 and got $50 in Kohl's cash, which I used the following week. No issues there. When Black Friday rolled around, I noticed the exact same vacuum was now selling for $150. I reached out to online customer service to see if they could refund the difference since I'd bought it online. They told me they don't do price matching or price adjustments during Black Friday promotions. Nothing they could do. While I was chatting with the rep, I looked up my order and noticed the return window was 90 days and I was still well within it. I pointed that out and tried using it as leverage, asking if they could just refund the difference instead of dealing with a return. Still no. At that point, I told the rep that if that was the case, I would return the used vacuum to Kohl's and just buy it on Amazon instead. They didn't budge, so I did exactly what their policy allowed. I ordered the same vacuum again from Kohl's for $150 with free delivery. That purchase also earned me $30 in Kohl's cash. When it arrived, I took the unopened box to my local Kohl's and returned it using my original $250 receipt from October. I fully expected them to deduct the $50 in Kohl's cash I'd already spent from the refund. but they didn't. End result, full $250 refund, $100 saved, plus an extra $30 in Kohl's cash. No rules broken, just follow their policies exactly. I do think this kind of thing is kind of shifting mostly in policy. I think a lot of places are kind of doing price matching now. But I think the premise here is it's such an inconvenience to the customer that they're banking on the customer just not doing it. I mean, most places for a return like that, they want you to have the actual physical receipt. A lot of people just don't keep it. As far as they think, you've probably already opened the product, so they're banking that you can't even return it anyways because of condition. It reminds me a few years back of when I bought a CPU from an online website, and I believe 2 or 3 days after I purchased it, they started a promotion where they were giving away a free game if you bought it. Truth be told, the game wasn't the end-all be-all. I think it was Star Wars Jedi Survivor or something like that. Would have liked to have had it, contacted them, said, hey, this started literally 2 days after I bought it, can I have the promotion? They tell me, oh no, sorry, it's only for orders placed within the promotion date. I had just gotten the CPU for my computer, and I was debating whether or not I wanted to go through returning it all the way to the online store. It was frustrating, but I just lived with it. Vanity Inc. commented, my dad did exactly this with Amazon one year. He had ordered a giant TV that went on sale on Black Friday. He contacted customer service asking about a price match, and they said they couldn't. He instead put in a return and ordered at the new price. He didn't even take the second TV in off the porch, just marked that he wanted the package picked up and made some poor delivery guy take it away again to refund the original purchase. Our next story is, the memo said we must give a printed receipt for every library checkout. So I did, until we ran out of paper. I work at a public library, and most days are calm, even when it's busy. Last month, someone higher up sent out a shiny new accountability memo that said every single checkout must include a printed receipt, no exceptions, no asking the patron, no email option unless they request it after you print. The memo literally said it reduces disputes, and if a patron refuses the paper, you still print it and discard it yourself for audit consistency. We all kinda rolled our eyes, but I decided fine. I'll follow it exactly because I'm not getting blamed later. The next Saturday, we had a line out the door. Strollers, seniors, kids, everyone, and I printed a receipt for every checkout, even when people said no thanks. I didn't speed print either because the policy also said to highlight due dates and verbally confirm them, so I did that too, every time. One guy checked out 47 items for a book club donation of sorts, so I printed 2 full pages of receipt, highlighted, confirmed, stapled, and then put the duplicate copy in the audit tray like the instructions told us. Another patron asked why I was throwing paper straight into recycling, and I just said, new rules, sorry, because I wasn't gonna editorialize. By noon, we had burned through 2 rolls of thermal paper, and the printer started doing that faint stripe thing, which means it's about to jam and needs a reboot. So I logged a supply request and kept printing away because the memo didn't say to pause for common sense. The line got slower, people got cranky, and we ran out of paper completely, which meant we couldn't check anything out at all because the receipt screen blocks the checkout until it prints. The fallout was immediate. The children's librarian had to cancel a Storytime giveaway, the holds shelf was overflowing, and the director got a call from the city office because someone complained they drove 30 minutes and couldn't borrow books because the printer was empty. Monday morning, we got a follow-up email that receipts are now optional again, and please be mindful of waste. I kept the original memo in my drawer, just in case they forgot how we got here. Anybody else find it kind of ironic that the one place that put in a memo to waste way more paper than was ever necessary was a library? I feel like there's just something so ironic about that fact. Oinga Pogo commented, I'm curious if this came from an over-controlling library director or from some idiot on the library board. My husband was a library director, and the things he had to dissuade the board from doing were mind-boggling. One very pushy board member kept wanting to charge patrons to check out books. Our next story is, you have to use the kiosk for that. I used to work the service desk at a big box store, the kind with a million tiny aisles and a lot of weekend chaos. Corporate rolled out this self-help push, and our store manager repeated it in a meeting. We were not supposed to walk customers to items anymore because it trained dependence and slowed down the desk. The approved script was to direct them to the new touchscreen kiosk map near the entrance. It sounded harmless on a slide, but in real life, half of our customers were older, tired, or just in a hurry, and the kiosk was always surrounded by carts and kids. Still, the instruction was super clear: use the kiosk, do not leave the desk unless it's for an actual return. So I did exactly that. Lady asks where the picture hooks are. I smile and point to the kiosk. Guy asks where light bulbs are. Kiosk. Someone asks where the restroom is. Yep, kiosk. People would look at me like I was messing with them, and I would do the same calm line. Store policy. The map will show you. Within an hour, we had a little cluster of confused customers poking the screen, then a line, then a second line for actual returns because I couldn't move faster. One customer got so frustrated they asked for a manager, and I happily called one over, then stood there quietly while the manager spent 10 minutes walking them to the aisle anyway. By the end of the weekend, we had 3 complaints logged, 2 abandoned returns, and the store manager asking why the kiosk area looked like an airport check-in. Monday morning, the rule was magically, use the kiosk when it helps, but just be human about it. When I go to a store, the last thing I want to hear is an employee walk up to me and say, "Hi there, would you like some help?" Thing is though, if I'm going to customer support or something like that because I want some help, the last thing you want to hear is, "Go check the kiosk." It's like the real-life equivalent of going to a live chat support and expecting an agent, but all you get is that AI chatbot that only lets you ask one of 2 questions, none of which actually solve anything you're trying to solve. I think the one place I've seen that actually does this kind of thing extremely well is like Lowe's or Home Depot. They just have massive A14 aisle signs plastered right at the top near the ceiling. At least in a place like that, it's really easy to understand where to go. Our next story is, admin says, just give him a multiple choice retake. I shared this on another thread in a different subreddit and it was popular, so I'm bringing it over here hoping you all enjoy some malicious compliance. I'm a high school math teacher. Earlier this year, I took over a geometry class during my prep period as the original teacher quit in late September. In late November, I gave one of my last unit assessments. My assessments are about 25 questions, none multiple choice. One of the students decided to answer any question he didn't know with 6-7, resulting in a 17%. I had a private conference with the student who thought it was hilarious. I did offer him the chance to come one day after school to do corrections on those problems for up to half credit. The student refused. I called mom to inform her and let her know that while he can still pass by doing well on the last test and course final, it is an uphill climb. Mom demanded I give her son a retake with multiple choice options. Mom says making the test not multiple choice is inviting the students to do that. I refused, but did inform her that some can stay after school to make corrections for up to half credit. She refused and went to the admin. Admin caved, making me offer the student a multiple choice version of the test. I decided to make one of the 4 answer choices in each question be 6-7. When the student finished the test, his score did improve to a 30%, selecting 6-7 as his answer on most questions, showing no work. I informed the mom and admin. The mom, again, went to admin demanding that I do not count any question he guessed 6-7. The admin refused and said, "We gave you what you wanted and your son another chance, and he continued his bad choice. The 30% will stay." The student did not pass the class, but the student did email me right as winter break started, apologizing for his behavior. He was a behavior concern throughout the class with 2 discipline referrals, and his not taking the test seriously, asking to change his grade from the 30% to a 70%, and around his final grade from a 52% to a 60, so he would get a 60% and pass. I do not enjoy failing students, and I understand geometry can be difficult for some, and many geometry concepts may not apply to their careers after high school. My philosophy is simple. 1. Regularly attend class. 2. Have a good attitude. 3. try your best. You do those 3 things, and you will pass. I try to focus on teaching important life skills like regular attendance, good work ethic, and asking questions, all of which will support you regardless of which career path you choose. And to add to my decision of putting 6-7 as an answer choice for each question, I did not do it to set him up for failure. I was hoping he would learn his lesson and give him a better chance to do better with one answer choice essentially being removed. He chose not to use that opportunity. He did, however, ask for both tests so he can show people how funny it is. I did not give him the tests for test security. This is one of those stories that just on a human level is so rough to experience, you kind of just put your face in your hands. I don't want to be rude because it is just a kid. You can choose the adjective that goes here, but basically they were to insert adjective here for their own good. And it really hurts secondhand to watch them willingly and proudly walk right into the 6-7 flamethrower pointed right at them. I will say though, this made me think about my 8th grade algebra teacher. I'm gonna be honest, I did nothing in that class. I couldn't stand it. I didn't pay attention in the beginning, and once I didn't get the core concepts, I felt so lost I didn't even try for the whole year. I know for a fact I absolutely bombed the last test. And in fact, at the time, they allowed us to view the gradebook. After the test was graded, I finished with like a 57 or a 58 overall, which clearly is a fail. A few days later, I checked it again. Magically, my test score got bumped up just a little bit, just enough for me to finish with a 60 in the course. No words, hardly ever actually directly spoke with that teacher, just enough for me to pass. That teacher, in retrospect, never even had much of a relationship, didn't talk to them, but they were awesome. Made a lot of sense just a few months ago when I finally started getting treated for ADHD that had gone undiagnosed and uneven looked at my whole life. But that's another story, and that's all the time we have for today. So if you want to hear another absolutely awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.